Hello, beautiful friends and fellow word lovers. Welcome back to Pocket of Poetry. It is that time again where I give you guys my thoughts on all the books that I read in July. July was an interesting reading month. Let me just say that right now. I read, I think, a total of 7 books, if I'm counting correctly. One of them, the last one I finished today. Today's the 31st. And I guess I don't want to say I was in a reading slump, but I definitely fell a little bit out of the reading groove that I was in for the first half of the year. I feel like I was in such a good groove. I was reading such a good variety of books. I had my TBRs somewhat planned out each month, and my July TBR ended up being completely different from what I actually read in July. So I kind of just mood read this month, aka I read an entire Shadowhunter series in 1 month. So yeah, but before we get into that, I'm going to jump into what I read first, and I'm going to talk about all the other books, and then we'll talk about the Shadowhunter books last. The first book that I completed in July was East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I started it very, very end of June and finished it beginning of July. This book was so lovely. So I don't know, I wanted to branch out with my classics this year. That was a big goal of mine for 2021. I really wanted to read more classics and expose myself to more classic literature. And this book I just saw recommended by this girl that I started following on Instagram, and she talks about this book a lot, and it really intrigued me, really made me want to read it. So I picked it up, and basically this is a novel set in the late 1800s in the Salinas Valley in California. It follows 2 different families, the Trask family and the Hamiltons, and it follows them kind of reenacting the story of Cain and Abel in a way. So we follow Adam Trask, who's kind of one of our main characters, and him and his brother sort of have a rivalry. They have a very complicated relationship, so it explores his childhood, his relationship with his father, his brother Charles earlier in the book, and it also talks about the Hamilton family. The father of the Hamilton family, I'm trying to remember his name. It was Samuel Hamilton. So Samuel Hamilton is the father of this really large family, and they live on this farm that is kind of in a dry, deserty place in the Salinas Valley, and they're not very prosperous because of it. But he's an inventor, he's a dreamer, he's super smart, he loves to read, and he was just a really, really interesting character, and he was actually based off of the author's own grandfather, I believe. So the Hamilton family was based off of the author John Steinbeck's actual family. And Samuel Hamilton was able to kind of give advice to the main character Adam and be a friend to him. So it was super interesting how he entwined the 2 stories, and also how he was telling the story of his own posterity, or not posterity, his own ancestors. So I thought that was really cool. Basically then Adam grows up, he marries this woman Kathy, who is completely crazy. She's just a psychopath. She doesn't have any emotions towards anybody, and she just will manipulate and lie and do whatever to get what she wants, and she ends up manipulating Adam into marrying her, and he's in love. They end up having twin boys, Cal and Aaron, and then we follow the story of Cal and Aaron as they grow up as well, and they're sort of also mirroring the story of Cain and Abel in a way too. So basically it's just a very sweeping historical novel about a family, about a bunch of different themes, good versus evil, sort of talking about a discussion of forgiveness, redemption, all of those kinds of themes and topics are discussed in this novel. It was an amazing book, truly one that I would recommend to everyone. It's definitely a classic for a reason. It is super sad though, there's a lot of really sad parts and really mature parts as well, because Kathy, the wife and mother of the boys, she ends up leaving her husband and she ends up joining a brothel and then slowly working her way up to be the head of the brothel and run the whole thing. And so there's a lot of sort of discussion of corruption and evil through her side of the story as well, which I did find her side of the story to be super interesting, because she's very it's just interesting. I always find it really interesting to get in the minds of those kinds of characters that kind of don't have emotions or empathy, but they're very smart and very calculating. That's the kind of character that she was, and so it was super interesting to see things from her perspective. Anyway, so my overall rating for this book is 4 stars. I gave it 4 stars because I loved it. Thought the writing was great, thought the characters were interesting. There were definitely parts of the book that I wasn't obsessed with. I don't know, I feel like certain aspects of the book, certain characters could have been fleshed out a little bit more than they were. And honestly, I would have liked to see more of Cal and Aaron's story than I was interested in the backstory. Like, I liked the backstory, but I liked Cal and Aaron's story a lot, and I thought Cal was an absolutely precious character. I just really loved him. So yeah, 4 stars for this one. I would definitely recommend it. I'm super glad that I read it. The second book that I read in July, which is actually on the shelf behind me, so let me grab it as all my books fell down. I just really switched out the book display for the month, and it looks like it's all I found, but we're just gonna not let that fall again. So the second book that I read was Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So this book was such a hyped, anticipated release for so many people, so many fans of Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing and stories, and I was just as excited as everyone else for this book to come out. I ordered it like around the end of June. I finished this book not quite in one sitting, but almost. Like, I was seriously reading. I read for like 5 straight hours, like just sat there. I could not put it down, and I decided I just didn't want to put it down, because sometimes I'll try to pace myself with books, and then other times I'm just like, nope, I'm just gonna finish it. I'm just gonna sit here and I'm gonna read the entire thing, and it's like a luxury for me when I let myself do that. So I decided that that's what I was gonna do with Malibu Rising. I read it mostly in one sitting, and then I finished the rest of it the next morning at work. But yeah, it was really very captivating read. Like, definitely from the beginning, I was super invested, super interested in what was happening to these characters, because so in Malibu Rising, we follow the 4 Riva siblings. They are the children of Mick Riva, who was a famous singer in the Taylor Jenkins Reid universe. And the 4 children are Nina, Jay, Hud, and Kit. Knowing that there's going to be a fire in Malibu by the end of the book, and we don't know how the fire starts or anything like that. So we kind of start out with that mystery, and then we get introduced to Nina, who's kind of the main character, and it's her house that they have this huge party, this huge like end of summer party every year. Famous people get invited, and then just like random people will come and show up, and it's just like this crazy huge party. It's like the event of the summer every year. And we start off with we get introduced to each of the 4 siblings, and then we go back in time and we learn about how their mother June and their father Mick met each other, and kind of their love story. And that was the part of the book when I really started to get hooked. Like, when they were describing Mick and June's love story, I was like so invested in it, because I just felt it really deeply. Like, I don't know, June was she was a very simple character. She wanted simple things. She had simple motivations, but she was a sweet character, and she just wanted love. She just wanted love and a happy family and a happy home, and Mick promised her all of that. And then throughout the rest of the story, we see how those promises really just kind of fell into shambles. And it was really tragic, but I was just so captivated by that part of the story. I just had to keep reading. So I will say my favorite part of Malibu Rising was probably the backstory. Like, I don't know what it is with my obsession with backstories, but I just love hearing like ancestor stories and backstories of characters. Later on in the book, Nina kind of ends up becoming a mother figure to her 3 younger siblings, and they are just this really tight-knit family unit, and then each one of them is going through their own like individual struggles and coming through their own trials and stuff. So overall, my rating for this book was a 3.5 stars. I liked it. I enjoyed it. Again, it was very compelling, very captivating, and hard to put down for sure. So I have to give it some points for that. But it definitely was not my favorite out of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books. It didn't captivate me in the same way that The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo did, or even Daisy Jones and the Six. Like, it didn't really have that same like effect over me that those books had. I guess there were certain parts of the story that I just thought were a little bit unnecessary. Like, especially there were all these random storylines of like different people at the party and things that they were doing, and it was just really, I don't know, I didn't connect to that part of the story as much. And also, I feel like a big part of the book was the whole party setting. Like, the party was like this big deal, and it was supposed to be like, I think it was just supposed to be very atmospheric. Like, we were supposed to feel like we were at this big crazy party, and in a way it was super fun to kind of just like live vicariously through these characters and pretend that you're at this giant raging party that, for me personally, I would never go to anything like that in real life, and that will never be a reality for me. So it was kind of fun to like live through that in this book. Part didn't really hold a lot of meaning for me, And the overall themes of the story were about like kind of drawing boundaries and learning how to break generational patterns and learning how to heal your own trauma. Like Nina had a ton of trauma that she had to heal from, a lot of generational patterns set by her mother that she kind of had to push away from. And so it was very empowering in that way to like see her kind of come into her power at the end of the book. But I guess the messages of the story didn't resonate with me and feel as like big and important to me as like her other books did, if that makes sense. So overall though, 3.5 stars. It was a very fun read, enjoyable, and very compelling. Okay, so then this is where I kind of hit my reading slump, because I had this whole plan for my reading month. East of Eden and Malibu Rising, they were like on my list. I checked those 2 off. And then from there, I was supposed to go on to other books. I talked about the death of Vivek Ogee in my mid-year book freakout tag, how I was excited to read that one, and I ended up DNFing it. I absolutely hated the death of Vivek Ogee. Like, I've heard so many great things about it, and I had heard it was so wonderful, and I was so excited to read it. And then I started reading it, and I was like, it's not doing it for me. It just was not doing it for me. I wasn't connecting to anything that was happening in the story, and I don't know if that's just because I don't like relate enough to their situation. Like, it was about a family. It was specifically one boy living in Nigeria, and this boy was Vivek Ojee's the main character. He's super mentally ill, and he's definitely struggling with his gender identity, which is in the small town of Nigeria very not received very well, because people have very old-fashioned and outdated views on things like that. And so Vivek suffers a lot of abuse and a lot of just trauma because he's in this community that doesn't understand who he is. Even though his parents are trying to like be supportive of him, they don't know how to help him. And I just like, I guess I could kind of see the point that they were trying to make and like what the novel was trying to be about, but I just did not like it. There were a few different things in there that I was just like, I'm not rooting for this character because TBH, he's kind of a pervert. Like, they just, maybe I'm like completely ignorant to say that, but I feel like Vivek was kind of a perv. I'm sorry. There were a couple of scenes where I was just like, I don't get it. Like, what's the point? Is this supposed to like make me feel sorry for it? Like, I don't know. It was just weird. Didn't like it, wasn't a fan, felt kind of gross while I was reading it. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna DNF. The part about it that sucks is that I actually bought it. Usually when I am not sure I'm gonna like a book, I will wait to purchase it. That one I was like, oh, I'm totally gonna like it because I've heard so many good things about it, but no, it was not. It wasn't my thing. So just wanted to mention that one because I know that I had already talked about that book in another video. Okay, so then I went to the library and I was like, oh, what should I read now? I don't know what to read. I'm in a reading slump, blah, blah, blah. Because all the other books that I wanted to read just suddenly didn't seem as good. You know, like when you read a book that you think you're going to like and then you end up hating it, it just ruins it. It just kills the vibe. So I didn't know what to read, but I went to the library and I decided to try a Stephen King book because I've been wanting to get into Stephen King for a while, but just have been intimidated, you know, because when you try and get into like a new author or like a new world like that, it's just kind of intimidating to start out. So I was at the library with my husband and I was like, what should I read? And he was like, just read a Stephen King book. And I was like, okay. And I was looking at the shelf of like Stephen King books and there was one that was like this big. And I was like, oh, I'll just grab this one because it's small and it'll take me like a day to read. And then I'll be able to say I read a Stephen King book. So the book was called Elevation. Took that one home. It's a story about a middle-aged dude. Don't remember his name, but he has this weird condition where he's not gaining. No, he has this weird condition where he is losing weight at a steady pace, and no matter what he's wearing, no matter how much stuff he has in his pockets, no matter how much he eats before he gets on the scale, he's still staying at a consistent weight and then consistently dropping down his weight. Out that he's suffering from some kind of anti-gravity phenomenon where anything within his like person, like clothes he's wearing, stuff like that, loses its gravity. So and he's also slowly losing his gravity as he slowly continues to lose weight. And he looks the same, like his appearance doesn't change at all. He still looks like a slightly chubby middle-aged man, but he's losing weight consistently. And so it's a super interesting premise. It was more of like a sci-fi book than like a horror book. I think people usually assume it's horror when Stephen King, but it wasn't horror. It was more of like a sci-fi. And the book, in and of itself, I gave a rating of 2.5 stars. It wasn't very, like, I don't know. It was okay. Like, I didn't hate it, but I was just like, I don't know. I just wasn't very into it, wasn't very attached to the characters or the story. The main character ends up having this sort of friendship with this lesbian couple that lives next door to him. And their small town that they live in Maine, I believe, is very, like, outdated with their beliefs, and so they're kind of against the lesbian couple because they're openly lesbian and because they're married, and that's not cool. They need to be on the down low about it, which I don't know. Still didn't really understand why that was like such a big issue for them. Maybe just because they were all, because they didn't act like they had like, because here's the thing, I feel like in general when people are homophobic, it's for like religious reasons, or just I guess just for conservative, like they're, I don't know, but I feel like usually the conservativeness comes from religious reasons. It didn't really seem like the people in this town had any religious prejudice against gay people. They just, I guess politically were like, don't do that openly. I don't know. So I didn't really understand that, and I didn't really understand why. Anyway, so the main character guy ends up running this marathon race with one of the gay ladies, and she is like a really good professional runner, and he beats her in the race because of his like anti-gravity situation. And well, actually no, sorry, he doesn't beat her. She beats him, but only because he helps her up at the very, very end of the race when she's like falling in the mud. And so it's like this dramatic moment, and then everybody like suddenly doesn't hate lesbians anymore. So it's just like, I don't know. That whole aspect of the story just made no sense to me. I was like, I don't get what the author is trying to say. Like, is he trying to make a political statement here, or is he, I mean, I don't know. It was just like, because like, yeah, anyway, I don't know. I found the characters to not be that interesting, or the story to be that interesting, and the whole thing about the lesbian couple, like, I felt bad for them because like their situation in that town was really hard because they had a restaurant. Their restaurant was losing business, and like, anyway, so it was just very not memorable, to be honest. It was just not a very memorable read at all. So I definitely want to try reading another Stephen King book though, because I know he's a great writer, and I know he has like way better books than that. That was just like one like small little short one that he wrote, and the concept was interesting. Like he has a very, very interesting like concepts behind his writing. So anyway, that's my thoughts on Elevation by Stephen King. Honestly, it was kind of a snooze. I just was really bored, but yeah. Okay, and then I'm going to next talk about the period mystery / romance book that I read, which I loved. It was called And Only to Deceive by Tasha Alexander. I talked about it in my last video actually, which was personalized book recommendations, but I loved it. Basically, I rated it a whole 4 stars. I thought it was just so well written. The main character was so witty and funny and cute, and I loved her. I loved the kind of slight mystery and intrigue. One of the other things I loved about this book that I didn't really mention in my other video was the aspects of female friendship. She had so many strong female friends in her life, and all of them were interesting characters. Like none of them were just like prop side characters for her. They were all interesting and well-rounded and funny and witty and smart, and I just really enjoyed that. I thought that the female friendship in this novel was like the highlight of the novel, and the romance was a little bit more of like a side story, and I loved that about it. I thought it was so fun, so refreshing to see the female friendships in this book. Honestly, just overall, it was a delight, and I definitely will be reading more of Tasha Alexander's books. I'm actually going to the library today, so I'm probably going to grab, because I saw there were a bunch of her books on the shelf, so I'll probably grab another one of her books today. So now we're going to talk about Cassandra Clare, my friends. So I actually read the entire Dark Artifices series in July. I read Lady Midnight, Lord of Shadows, and Queen of Air and Darkness. I just finished Queen of Air and Darkness this morning, actually. And I have to say, The Dark Artifices is now my favorite Shadowhunter series. Like, even more than the Infernal Devices. That's how much I love it. And if you've watched my other videos, you know how much I love the Infernal Devices. The Dark Artifices was better. Like, I was obsessed. I was hooked from pretty much the first few pages of Lady Midnight. I gave Lady Midnight 5 stars. That one was just so, it was pure serotonin. Like, that book, read that book if you just want to feel so happy, because seriously, it just made me so happy, you guys. Like, not only, okay, and the main reason that I love the Dark Artifices more than any of the other series is because of the characters. The characters in this series are incredible. The way that they're developed, the way that they're written, their relationships with each other, just all of it is perfect. The story mainly centers around the Blackthorn family. So we have Julian Blackthorn, who is sort of the honorary oldest sibling, who has kept his entire family together, has basically been a father to his younger siblings since the Dark War, which was 5 years ago. Happened at the end of the Mortal Instruments series. We meet Emma. Emma Carstairs is Julian's parabatai. So Emma Carstairs and Julian Blackthorn are the main characters in this series. We meet them in the last book of the Mortal Instruments, City of Heavenly Fire, when they're 12 years old. And so you already, if you've read the Mortal Instruments and then you read the Dark Artifices, you already have this like connection and interest in their characters, which I thought was so smart of Cassandra Clare to do, by the way, to put them in that last book and then have them create their own spin-off series. Like, you 100% are already rooting for them and loving them. But this series takes place 5 years after that. So basically, this is, I guess, a spoiler if you haven't read City of Heavenly Fire, so you might want to skip ahead a bit. But Julian's father was killed in the Dark War. Emma's parents were both killed as well, so they're orphans. They're basically on their own at the LA Institute. A lot of stuff going on. I'm not going to get into it all, but what I am going to say is that the characters are my favorite. So I'm just going to quickly, briefly introduce you guys to the characters in the Dark Artifices so that you can understand why you need to read this series. So we have Emma. She's sort of like the female version of Jace Herondale. That's how I think of her. She's super good fighter, an amazing warrior. She's kind of funny and sarcastic like Jace is. She's beautiful. She has golden blonde, beautiful hair. And she's just like a really strong character. And then we have Julian, who is her parabatai, and you kind of know from the beginning that Emma and Julian have romantic feelings for each other, which is not supposed to be a thing. If you're a parabatai, you are not supposed to have romantic feelings for each other. It's very, very much forbidden. And so they're kind of like in denial about it at the beginning of the book. But Julian is basically the best character I think Cassandra Clare has ever written. I adore him. He's so cute. He's such a sensitive soul. He's an artist. He's an amazing painter. He just is like a sensitive soul, but he's so protective over his younger siblings. He will like murder you on the spot if you threaten one of them. One of his main character traits that they talk about in the book is his ruthlessness. Like, he's so ruthless, and he just will, like, when it comes to his family, he will do anything to protect them. And you know this about Julian, but he's also just like, he's soft and sweet, but also so smart. Like, he's just such a good, well-rounded, balanced character. And I feel like, as much as I love like so many of the other like male protagonists that Cassandra Clare has written, Julian Blackthorn is probably my favorite. And then we have Julian's younger siblings. So we have Ty and Livy, short for Tiberius and Livia, who are twins. Tiberius is autistic, and he's like super, super brilliant. He loves Sherlock Holmes and solving mysteries. He loves small animals. He's basically just the cutest freaking character you can ever imagine. The most adorable, like, little black-haired, pale-skinned boy who's autistic, and just, I love him so much. Like, he's just, you can't not love Ty. Like, it's literally not possible to read this book and not fall in love with Ty. I'm just warning you right now. And his twin sister Livy is basically his other half, his rock. She's the person that's like able to calm him down, able to like help him through anything, and they just have a really sweet bond with each other. And then next comes Drusilla, who goes by Drew. She's 13 when this book starts, so she's the second youngest, and she's just so sweet and spunky, and literally by the end of the trilogy comes into so much power and is just such a badass, and I love her. She's adorable. And then we have Tavi, the baby, and he is only 7 years old in the series. He was 2, I think, in the City of Heavenly Fire. And he's just the baby of the family. Everybody loves him and won't do anything to protect him. So that is our Blackthorn family. They also have 2 older half siblings who are half fairy, Mark and Helen. And I just want to let you know, you will fall in love with the Blackthorns. You will cry for them. Like, the love and the bond that they have with each other as siblings is just the sweetest thing ever. And I'm such a sucker for sibling and family tropes. Like, it makes me cry every time. So basically just read it. Read the entire series. It's so good. Lord of Shadows made me bawl my eyes out, and then Queen of Air and Darkness was not much better, but they're both amazing. So that is the end of my wrap up for this month. I just wanted to rant for as long as I wanted. I don't know. This video is probably way too long, but hopefully you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a like, and if you are feeling like it, you should also subscribe so you can see more videos like this of me just, ranting about my thoughts about books, if anyone even enjoys that. So thanks so much and have a great day, and I will see you guys in the next video.